So I want to welcome today my good friend and mapping partner in crime, Sarah Ann Shanahan of the Wrapup network, who's going to share a map that we made recently, and together Tim and Sarah and I, and a map that was full of ahas and insights that much of which got put into the map, and so we're kind of excited to share it. And so let me, oh, I forgot to share my screen. There's the picture of the wondrous Miss Sarah. And here's her, and I'm gonna drive the map because, and I'll let Sarah explain why. So Sarah, take it away.
Well, hello, everybody. I recognize many of the faces here, so it's good to see you all. As Christine has said, I'm the Director of Community Management for the Wrapup Network, and I've been working with Christine for about 2 years now to build a map of our own network. You know, we're a network that's really grounded in a practice of thinking systemically. That's something that has really changed the way that we think about reducing greenhouse gas emissions in the Midwest. And so for us to extend that thinking to our own network, to ourselves, to begin to understand the dynamics, the relationships, what's going on internally for a network, that's been you know, something that I think has been really important for us and really helping us understand our network in a different way. And that allows us as network practitioners then to really be more conscientious and I think more strategic about the way that we're giving care to our network. And as I said, you know, Christine and I have been working together for about 2 years to build a map of the Wrapup network. But the map I'm showing you today is a separate project. So earlier this year, well, I'm sorry, last year, it was December of last year, living in 2019 still, not 2020, we hosted a network thinking academy. And as part of that academy, naturally, we wanted to teach about social systems mapping because again, like it's a way of thinking systemically about a network. And I have to say that building this map has been fun. And as Christine had indicated, I had so many ahas during the building and creating of this map that I can't wait to apply to my own map. So I'm going to talk a little bit about this. I'm going to talk about it in a way that we approach the process of social systems mapping to begin with, to really talk through, you know, how we went about the visioning stage, you know, what some of the things that happened during the technical phase, like as we were building these maps, and then sort of where we're at now in terms of like, how did we use this map to make sense of things together? So thank you for driving the map, Christine, since I'm calling in from Costa Rica today. It's helping my bandwidth to have you drive the map here. So, you know, with that, I guess I'll just get started. So, you know, again, you know, we really started this first in the visioning phase, right? So in the visioning phase, really what Christine and I did was we had just sat around and just started brainstorming, you know, what are some of the things that we normally collect in the survey, like what we want to know about people, you know, what might be unique about this group, right? We're bringing together these network practitioners, these network thinkers. And again, we just started sort of generating ideas. And as we started doing this, you know, I don't even actually remember exactly how this came about, but we had this aha moment where we realized that, you know, what's so cool and I think so unique about social systems mapping is the fact that we get to see these relationships, that we get to understand relationships in a really interesting way. And what we realized is that, you know, when we've been building these maps, we ask, you know, a dozen, 20 questions about an individual, but we often only ask one question about the relationship that we have with another person. And so it got us wondering, like, what would this map look like, or what might we learn differently about relationships if we started asking some deeper and some more questions about the relationships between each other? So, so we did that actually, and it was really interesting because we actually got a little bit of pushback from our co-facilitators. So we had some of these ideas, we kind of had these ahas, and we go back to our group of facilitators and we say, hey, like we've had this like moment of like huge clarity and we really want to like do something with this and we want to ask more questions and, you know, we really want to understand this a deeper way. And the response we kind of got was, okay, that seems cool. And you know what? I don't think people are going to spend the time to go in and answer all these questions about each relationship, right? There's 30 people on this map. I'm not going to go in and answer a dozen questions about each tile, each person that I'm connecting on. So, you know, on one hand, that was a little disheartening for Christine and I, who were so excited coming out of this visioning phase. And on the other hand, right, like we were just being really grounded in reality. So, you know, what that did was that really helped inform our process and thinking. So we kind of just asked ourselves, okay, well, then so what? You know, what do we do? How do we hold both of these? How do we do both and? How do we still keep it easy for people? And how might we still like get a little bit deeper into these relationship questions? So what we settled on was we settled on just having a really abbreviated individual profile. So we really just try to get to like the bare bones, just what are the most critical things we need to know about every individual? And like, let's not get too fluffy in that department. So we really abbreviated that. Then what we did too was we broke apart the relationship questions. And actually, Christine, maybe I should show my screen right now. Was we split up the relationship questions and we asked people 3 questions before about how they knew each other before the academy, and then we asked people about how they interacted at the academy. So what I'm going to do right now is I'm going to share with you those questions that we asked. So here we had these were, hopefully you can see my screen, but we just simply asked people how they knew each other ahead of the meeting, right? Were you aware of them? Had you communicated with them? Maybe you worked with them, maybe you're currently collaborating. And then to, again, like we're trying to get a deeper understanding of like, what it is that people are getting out of these relationships. So we asked them, right? Like, what are some of the dynamics that exist here? And, you know, for those of them who are maybe just aware or had previously communicated, like, were there hopes that they had for their relationship with each other at the academy? And we thought this last question, the hopes for the academy, that we could use that as facilitators in thinking about the way that we're designing these. Right, so if we know that somebody wants to spend some time collaborating or catalyzing collaboration, you know, perhaps we could be intentional about pairing them in a small group or a partner conversation, or maybe there's some other ways that we could build that into our design work. So we asked those 3 questions before the academy, and as we tested this, we did realize that, you know, while it does seem like, oh wow, we're asking a lot, in fact, like this really only added like an additional minute or 2 of your time in terms of answering this about everybody in the group. Then the other thing we did was we asked people to, as like an evaluation, as a follow-up after the academy, to just ask them about their experience with each other, right? Were there, you know, what ways did they connect with each other? What ways did they engage with each other? What was, you know, what was the nature of that interaction? And then the 2 open-ended questions here, we were really interested in, like, are you interested in collaborating with this person outside, like beyond the academy? Like after you leave here, are you going to do something great together? And what do you remember most about this person? So this piece about like, are there intentions that you have beyond the academy? You know, as somebody who's a network practitioner, this is a question I'm really interested in. Right? Because I do want to know, like, for starters, are there opportunities for me to support that collaboration between them, right? That's good network practice. The other thing that this does is it starts to put us on this path of being able to collect some of the ripple effects from our intentions that we have in the network, right? We know we bring people together. We know that we start to catalyze new ideas. Well, then so what? Like, what is happening beyond this academy? What's happening beyond the network? And how might we know that? How might we follow up on it? How might we track it? So in a way, this is starting us down that path of being able to do some ripple effect mapping as well. So that's what we had settled on, and I'll let you pull the map back up then, Christine. Okay. One other thing that I should have said too, but I don't think I showed this in my picture anyways, is, you know, again, as we were sort of thinking about the intention behind the map, the other thing that we wanted to test and experiment with is we know that networks are a place where we really want people to be able to bring their full selves, that we really want to be able to find ways for people to indulge in self-care or really, like, you know, express themselves in a really creative way. So another thing that we did was in the individual profile, we did ask people an open-ended question about how they indulge in self-care. So what self-expression or self-care do you personally like to engage in? So there you go, perfect. Thanks for showing that. So that was kind of our visioning phase, right? So that's what we sort of dreamt of. That's what we landed on. Well, then it was like, okay, we needed to start collecting some of this information. So a couple of weeks ahead of the academy, we started making a push for people to put their data and information in here so we could start to see what was coming in and we could start to play with the views. And by we, I really mean Tim Hansen, because he is the technical guru in this team. And he makes most of the magic happen for us. You know, I think something that really inspired us in this map too is showing up to conversations like this. You know, even though I know that, you know, I have a little bit more background in terms of mapping and using maps, so I may be seen as an expert, coming into these spaces, I'm often like inspired by the ways that I'm seeing other people think about this and other people approaching this, right? And all of that helps inform our greater understanding of how to use social systems mapping in a way that's most effective in the world. And Christine in particular, you know, she sees a lot more maps than I do. And I think it was a combination of these experiences that started to move us down a path about thinking about, you know, in a technical way, how do we start producing maps and producing views in a way that really allows people to feel comfortable stepping in. For those of us who have a little familiarity with mapping, you know, it's easy for us, I think, to step in and feel okay with it, even when it's messy or maybe a little overwhelming. What I've noticed in my own network members or for people who are fairly new to this type of mapping is they're often excited but overwhelmed at the same time. So really thinking about like that feeling overwhelmed, like what might we do differently in the ways that we're producing views to help people feel comfortable into stepping into using the map. So Christine actually had this idea based on a map that she had seen, and she said, hey, you know, we often start with these really complex views, right? Where we're showing the people, we're showing the relationships, it's really cool, it's all really messy. But what if we just like took that back and basically made like a yellow pages, like a really simple member directory that just shows people, and then we could do some filtering to find characteristics we're looking for. You'll notice on the map that we're showing you right now, there's only a handful of faces. These were the facilitators. You know, anytime we show these are private maps and we want to protect individuals and their privacy. So that's why you're not seeing their faces on here. If you were part of this map, like Stephanie, who's on the call, is part of this map, you know, she has the ability to come in here and see all the people and their faces in the circles. So just
Mary,
so you know that we're intentionally blocking that out. Oh, and Mary too, yes.
yeah.
Yeah. So we built this like very simple member directory. And, you know, for me in my experience with the Reamp network, like this is something that I could see as an incredibly powerful tool for us, because oftentimes that's what we're looking for, right? We're stepping into the network and we're looking for somebody who has something that we need, right? Maybe I'm looking for somebody who is a fellow board member, right? Maybe I'm looking for other executive directors, you know? Great. So we can start to use this simple member directory to start filtering and start looking into the network for some of those characteristics, right? Without like having the noise of like who knows who or some of these other lines, I think that make it really confusing. So I think this was like, at least for me, it was like, oh, wow, like why have I not been doing this already? This is definitely something that we need to start practicing in my own network to really make it easier for members to step in and want to use the map for themselves. So again, you know, this is the member directory. It's a way for us to start to filter. So we're looking for specific characteristics, but we've removed the relationships and some of the other messiness of it. The other thing that you're going to notice here on the left-hand side panel, you're going to see this is where we're kind of hitting some of these views. And what we've done in this side panel is we've really thought about this ladder of engagement in terms of using the map, right? Like, you know, step one, it's just a member directory, right? Easy to filter, find what you're looking for. Well, then how do we kind of keep deepening that and making things a little bit messier, making things a little bit more complex, being able to see this network in a different way? So what we did was we did do some clustering. So we had the contribute and develop further. So here what we did was we looked at some of the core topics that we were teaching at the Network Academy. And we were able to create clustered views then to see, you know, who had that expertise and who was interested in gaining more around it. So this is a way for people then to self-organize around some of these topics. Or as somebody who may be like director of community management in my own network, I would look at this and then find ways to like bring people together around these conversations. Maybe asking somebody to share what they know and then inviting those who want to learn more to join that conversation to really help build the capacity of those based again on what we know that they're looking for already. So it's just a way, I think, to be really smart and strategic about it.
So just to point out the line differences.
Oh, please go ahead.
You can.
Oh, so
What does it mean when there's a solid line versus a dashed line?
well, Christine, thanks for asking. Um, we like to do these different line views because, right, like this is a visual language. So you're going to see it before you read it. So a solid line indicates that this is something that someone has to contribute. They're able to offer this expertise to this idea. If it's a dotted line, we know that's somebody who's looking to develop and build capacity around that specific topic.
So there you can see what I can offer to the network, and you can also see what kind of support and learning I would like to gain from the network by which lines are solid and which lines are dotted.
Yep, exactly.
You can also just filter on only the contributions or only the things we need help with or want to develop. Okay.
That's all that fancy technical stuff that Tim does for us. Thanks, Tim. Another cluster view we had was we did one around self-care. So remember I said in our individual profile, we had asked an open-ended question about how you indulge in self-care. Well, as you can imagine, because it's an open-ended question, like you actually can't really do anything useful with that in terms of mapping, right? We'd probably have 200 different ideas and nodes that would pop up in the network. So we actually did a little bit of an adapted action together. So we had asked people the open-ended question, and then the day before the meeting, Christine and I sat down and we dug through all of their responses, and to the best of our ability, we built categories around them.
Hang on a second.
Oh, you having a little trouble getting there?
Something's going wrong. Full self clusters. Okay. I don't know what that was about, but yeah. Okay. Sorry, proceed.
Okay.
Sorry.
So, yeah, no, that's okay. So again, so what Christine and I had done, it's an open-ended question. We dug through those responses, and to the best of our ability, we started building categories based on how people responded. Then what we did was we took that category, that list, and we went back and we updated that question in the sumApp, in the individual profile. And instead of being an open-ended question, it was a series of checkboxes. So at the Academy, what we did was we actually gave people in real time, like at the Academy, as we're talking about social systems mapping, we said, hey, we want you to take 5 minutes, open back up your profile, and we want you to click on all the things that seem relevant to you in terms of how you indulge in self-care and expression. So that allowed us to then produce this view. And the intention behind this view was a couple-fold. One, we wanted to showcase this and tell people like, hey, you should use this and think about ways that you may connect with some of these folks while you're here together. And what we saw that some people self-organized to go take a walk because that was a way for them to all indulge in self-care. The other thing that we did too was we also used this in real time at the Academy. So at the very end of the first day, we had a session that was about teachbacks. So people were taking a core concept, they were in a small group, they were going to teach it back to the full group. So what we did was Christine and I handpicked 5 of these categories that we thought would serve a group well. So, do you like drawing? Do you like writing? Do you like doing dancing? So we had picked out these 5 ideas. We asked people to self-organize that in small groups based on which one they felt the most affinity towards. And we encouraged them to use that way of indulging in self-care as a way of designing their teach back to the group. So it did make it really fun. And we hope that it brought people around similarity. And I think those are the only 2 ways that we used this particular view at the Academy. Is that right, Christine?
Yeah.
Yeah, great. So that was another simple clustered view that we did. And then maybe we should go over to a couple of our final views here. So again, we designed this map to get deeper and deeper and deeper into the weeds, right? To get more and more complex about the network. So the next one that we looked at was involvement. So here we started, this is the first view where we started adding the relationships between people. So we could start to see how people know each other. And you know, again, that helps us with our network practice, because then what I can see on this map is I can see who's really well connected and who's in the center of the network, and I can start to see who's on the edges. So for someone who's a network practitioner, right, I'm trying to look at those people who are on the edge, find out what's different or interesting about them, and how to bring them a little bit closer into the network. I wouldn't know how to do that if I was not able to see the picture of how they know each other and how they're connected. And what Christine's showing you here too is like you can start to see your own network, right? Like you can filter or focus in on yourself, and you can start to see the relationships between you and other people.
And I just,
this view was really interesting for us. Oh, go ahead.
no, I was just going to say, and you can, if you click on the actual links between people, you can actually see what the from person said about the relationship. So for instance, with Sarah, you know, I go to Sarah for a lot of things: shared project work, fun, moral support, etc. So you can start to see the thickness of the lines is based on the strength of the connection response. So the thickest is collaborating, the least is aware of their network. So these thin lines, that means I'm aware of them or aware of that person's work. But then you can see more about it. You can see the qualitative, semi-qualitative responses as well when you click on the line. Okay, that's what I was showing. So, and I just filtered it, so quit clicking on people whose faces aren't showing.
That's totally fine. Will you go back to like the full, yeah, perfect. That's exactly what I was looking for. So Christine actually just wrote a blog post about this called Whose Relationship Is It Anyway? But it was looking at this map that actually kind of had a personal aha moment for me, because I had realized after looking at this map that Tim and I had rated each other differently. That Tim had rated me at the strongest connection level. I had actually rated Tim at a much weaker connection level. And it took some like talking and figuring out why that was the case. But once we realized it, especially for myself, like it changed the way I was interacting with Tim. You know, I went out of my way to go spend more time with him and to get to know him better as a person. And yeah, I think if you have a chance to share that blog post again, Christine, like I think that's a really good thing, because I think it's easy for us to be afraid of saying, wow, like this person rated me this way, but I only rated them that way, or vice versa. And you can feel like your feelings are getting hurt. But really, it's an opportunity for us to just step in and like learn more about each other's perspectives and why we perceive things the way we do, because we may find that it's something very simple. In our story, it was just that I talked to Christine a lot more than I talked to Tim, even though like Tim's hearing my name and doing my work for me all the time. So it was interesting. You should read that blog post if you haven't already. And then finally, we also had the on the balcony view. So this was a way for us to look at relationships. We can highlight different characteristics and see how they're living within the network as a whole. So in the view that we were just exploring, we can do some filtering, so we can start to, you know, zoom in while still keeping some of the relationships. In a showcasing view, on the balcony view, we see the relationships, but we can highlight them so we can see how that set of relationships is living within the whole. In my own network, this is a really, I think, important view that helps us really think about the work that we're doing, how we're doing it, and who else needs to be part of the network in order for us to accomplish our goals. So that's all I was going to say about the views. But Christine, maybe I should just pause and see if there's anything else that you want to highlight about any of these views that we've just talked about.
No, that's great. I'm
Okay.
So how about if what we do is we now just open it up to other people asking questions about the map, and we'll spend maybe
Perfect.
5 minutes on that, and then we can switch to the registration form questions.
Perfect. Sounds good to me.
Questions, anyone? Or comments? And also invite the people, Stephanie and Mary, who were at the Academy, to make any comments also about your experience of that map.
Sarah, I'm sorry, go ahead.
I just had a really quick comment that this business about looking at the asymmetry in relationships, in relational coordination, you're mapping strength of relationships between interprofessional roles like doctors and nurses and so forth. And when you get up on the balcony and look at that map and you see the asymmetry, like typically between doctors think they have great relationships with everybody and everybody else goes, no. that pushes, in that case, the collective, or at least the stakeholders, forward to really examine and start to do interventions around the relationship. So I think that was great that you saw that, Sarah, because I think it plays out. It's something that can be used across situations.
Sarah, how did you determine your initial relationship building questions, or your initial, because there's lots of questions with regard to relationships. How did you kind of go through that process?
Yeah, it was hard because,
It's
as
hard,
you
it's not
said,
easy,
right,
yeah.
like there's so many ways, yeah, that you could cut it. So, you know, Christine and I had bounced a bunch of ideas between ourselves, and then we shared that back with the other facilitators, and we used that to sort of land on, you know, how do we get deep enough but still keep it simple enough? I don't think there's a right answer. I think it was good just to like talk about it, share it, and then kind of like refine it and just be okay with it.
Did you feel those questions became the bonding points or the instances where people can bond with? Was that the determination, or, you know, within that community, did that have an effect on it?
That's a good question. I don't know. I guess you know, I'm actually kind of curious, Mary or Stephanie, like, how did you feel about those connection questions?
I think I found them okay. It seems like in that time period, we were working on different maps, a map with Jim. And so I think they were fine. Yeah. I'm just muddling through in my mind, so I'm a little distracted. About mapping, sort of the time element of, I always take things more seriously than I probably need to. So I'm sort of wondering how far out these maps live, or if they're more sort of for this limited period of time. So I think I'm always wondering how they'll live into the future and curious about that, and how you encourage people through the mapping to keep involved, which is a huge task in our world, where time is so precious.
Yeah.
So I guess that question I want to perceive, or for some conversation at some point, maybe offline, is sort of a balanced picture of how we can use the maps in a more facile way of not taking them too seriously, and on the other hand, really looking at them for sense making and rich conversations. I'll end it there.
Okay.
Well,
Yeah.
and this is,
So I guess maybe the jury's still out, but go ahead.
So this is Stephanie. When I was filling that out, it said that this would be used to plan the event. And I did think of myself, here I am, strength of relationship in terms of who would I want to connect with. And so I found myself thinking, so what are the consequences? How is that going to impact the design? And how would somebody think, oh, well, I picked them and I didn't pick this other person. So and you know, based on very little. So I appreciate y'all pointing out the implications when you see these maps, and suddenly maybe somebody's always on the outside, or they're always, you know, so I think we can be very facile with some of this and not really think through the implications sometimes of it. So I appreciate you bringing it up. I'm not sure I realized that when we broke into those 5 groups, that those were based on the survey. I think y'all did mention it, but every time you actually use one of those things, I think we need to make sure and tell people we're actually using this map now in the design of this, so they can see how it pops out the other end.
Yeah,
That's a great tip, Stephanie. Thank you. And Katie, I saw in the chat that you had a question as well.
Yeah, I actually now have two, so I'll make them really quick. But the first is, are people meeting more than once in the academy in person? And are you mapping over time a change in relationship? No. And then the second question is,
No.
It was a 3-day thing though.
Nice. Okay, that's right. I remember reading about it, but I couldn't remember. The next question is about the social network analysis. And it, just then looking at it, my inference is kind of what you would expect with people coming together for a workshop. Like, it's not a really well-developed network, right, with a solid core and a periphery. And is that the right inference that this is, the way the layout is, it's a force-directed map, right, rather than being kind of geographically curated in different ways. Yep. So it's fair to make that inference about this network. Is that right?
Yeah. The view that you're seeing, yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
Nice. And did you do any other social network analysis with this, or not so much, because that wasn't really the purpose of this?
No, not so much.
Thanks.
So other questions about the map before I want to just touch on one question that came in the registration form. Also, anyone else?
I was wondering how it influences your future direction in terms of the next academy of.
Yeah, no, that's a good question. So I think for me, like, I do have some ideas on how to use this map for the next iteration of the academy. So a couple of things I'm thinking about is, we know that we really want to focus in on a couple of core concepts and not maybe focus on so many next time, but really dig deeply into some. So depending on which ones we select, I could really see using this map to find those people with that strength. And perhaps using them to help co-facilitate. And this question about race is also one that I would also be very intentional in using them too, because we really do value diversity. And so I'd really want to be intentional going to be co-facilitating with somebody to find somebody who is, of non-Caucasian descent. And I could use the map in that way, I think, too, then, and to identify some of those folks who I may reach out to.
I'll just make a quick comment that I experience with every map that we work on, which is that there's just a huge way that the map is generally sort of an afterthought or tacked on, like the map, the event designers and facilitators, they fill their 3 days with stuff, and then it's like, oh, map. Yeah, okay, we've got this map. Okay, we can give you 10 minutes here in the plenary session, and then maybe we'll give you 15 minutes over there at the end. And then as the mapping facilitator, you're trying to figure out how to fit into everything else, and it's not, and we really tried because in this map, we were given more time, and we were more intentional about using the map as part of the event design. And I feel like this is the first time I got to be part of a project where the intention was to refer back to the map and to use the map in designing. And I feel like we just barely scratched. I mean, we barely, Stephanie, your comment is helpful. And I feel like Sarah and I were still, even though we were allotted more time and we were part of the overall the map was part of the overall process, it still had that dynamic of trying to figure out how to fit in the sense making of the map, how to fit that into all of the other sessions, and and it still did sort of feel like we're trying to cram a square peg into a round hole a little bit. It was the least like that I've ever experienced it. It was remarkably less like that than I've ever experienced, but it was still like that. And so I feel like we're still learning. We don't know how to and I haven't, with these kinds of maps, I have not seen or been aware of a situation where that wasn't the case. So it's like still learning how to roll that sense making up into every single piece of the, into the planning, into the, when now we're going to go talk about, equity and inclusion. How do we use the map as part of that? But part of that I feel like is is all of the facilitators understanding the resource that it is that they could be using, which we haven't gotten that far in training. Okay, that's my little bandwagon. Yeah.
I guess I thought it was going to be that way at the academy as well, that it would start with some of those images and be
Yeah.
referenced in.
I have a fantasy land and wherein that would happen, and it would be more like that. And it's still, even for people who think the mapping is cool and understand the value of it, it still isn't what we think of. We don't think, just like people will think, okay, we need a PowerPoint. They don't think, oh, we need to consult our map. Or, you know, and that's just a huge mind shift that I'm seeing as a challenge. So, okay, so Bruce, looks like you have to go. Thanks for, and there was one of you had a question. Okay, that's, uh-oh, I'm gonna say it wrong. Reiner's question, is he still with us? Yes, there you are. Okay, thank you. Okay, so thanks, so Bruce is gone. Reiner had a question, and I'm gonna read the question, and I don't think we're gonna answer it adequately, but how to start mapping with different levels of deepness or altitude. So you have people and organizations, neutral infos, location, field of expertise. So just sort of demographic stuff. And some of those people have a friendly attitude to your own organization, and some are kind of toxic, but you have to work with them. This touches on a thing that a number of us have been sort of trying to think about for a while. So I have a kind of map with neutral information visible to all and a deeper layer only visible for the friendly environment. Do I need 2 maps? So first of all, if you're making social system maps using sumApp, it's a different dynamic than so it's like everybody is reporting their own opinion of the relationship. So right away, it's a much more transparent thing. And in some ways, it's a much more conformist thing. Like, we don't even ask questions like, I haven't been in a situation in a project yet where we ask things like, you know, I feel like this person or this organization, you know, I'm in conflict a lot, or they're undermining our work, or they're not beneficial. No one's asked that in my experience. But even if we did, it would probably take years for people to get comfortable with answering that honestly. So if you're using sumApp, there's that. Everyone's reporting their own perspective of the relationship. But if you could get at those different layers, if you were gonna like use sumApp as your own tool and just put your own thoughts in it, like pretend to be everybody and do what you think is what they would say or something like that. So I'm just pointing out a technical difference, but if aside from the technical difference, you can always filter out. So you can have a view that has the publicly, the okay information, and then you can have different, that filters out the touchy information. And then you can have another view, just that you have it's just a different view without that. And then just don't make the secret one available publicly. I hope that helped. I mean, it opens up a whole lot of, like, there's a whole bigger discussion that could be had there. We've got 3 minutes. What I would like to do is just have a moment of reflection. I have a couple, I'll just share wrap-up information. First of all, so I couldn't quickly find the link to that blog post that Sarah was referring to, and so we will add that to a follow-up email. We also, in the follow-up email, there will be a link, and Kara, I need to get you a new one, but there will be a link to put yourself into a map that we started a while ago and haven't really pursued because we got busy, but a community of practice map for social system mappers, which is my idea of where we can really test our thinking, and everybody can really, even if all they want is just an experience of being on a map, they can just be on a map and not answer a whole lot of questions, but that we can come back to it and start to figure out ways we could be sense making with it as practitioners, and ways, and begin to really, so that we have an example that we can all access and play with. And I think that the people who are coming to these community practice sessions are the most likely people in the world to like actually go back and update a map and for it to have any kind of longevity. So that will be our key experimental learning map. And a lot of you are on it already. I have not finished filling it out, and Tim is currently just working on getting the map in a nice shape. But I want to encourage you to look for the link for the opt-in, which is to the opt-in form for that map, and put yourself on the map. Even if you don't want to answer any questions, even if you don't want to engage in it, just give us a preliminary, and then you'll see, you'll get to interface with the sumApp tool as well. It will give you an opportunity to see what all the pieces of the technology and how they fit together. Okay. And then since we've only got a minute, I just want to, let's do a popcorn reflection. So let's just, as you're, bye Stephanie, as you're, just give us, like, everybody unmute and just throw it in there. Don't worry about taking turns, just a word of what you just, a reflection on what we just did in the last hour. How you feel, what you're thinking, what's new.
Encouraged to put my hands into that.
Engaged.
Cool.
Appreciation.
Possibility.
New insight.
I was gonna say, always more to do, to figure out.
Always more to do, that is for
Yeah,
sure.
right.
Always more to do.
Thanks for sharing, you guys.
Thanks
Yes,
for
we
joining us.
appreciate it.
Thanks.
Yeah. Okay, so let's say thank you to everybody, and those of you who need to jump off, and if you want to stick around, just pause a moment and wait till we see what settles out. Thank you all.
Thank you.
Bye, Jim.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Not going.